Hi folks, and welcome to today's video, lumbar disc herniation, understanding the mental struggles. Now, I do make a lot of good content for those folks that are suffering with low back pain issues, such as sciatica nerve pain, lumbar stenosis, herniated disc, bulging disc, sciatica. If that is you, then hit that subscribe button. You're going to get notified when I upload some great content to get you back on the road to pain-free recovery. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. So folks, today I would like to talk about the mental burden, the mental struggles, understand what can come psychologically when suffering from a lumbar herniated disc. Bulging disc, sciatica nerve pain, all these things very often go together. And this particular injury, it can take its toll mentally on you when you're suffering from this condition. It is something I hear a lot from clients that I work with and people I do on the free advice call. It is something which I think is not dealt with very well at all by mainstream medicine, either in a socialized healthcare place like Canada, the UK, or USA if you're insurance-based. Parts of Europe it's more insurance-based. This is one big area which is deeply lacking in support. And a lot of people don't understand the injury itself and how these things come about, these feelings, these emotions. So today I want to go through a variety of emotions, understand that these are very commonplace for you if you're suffering from a herniated disc, how they manifest. And this is going to be part one. Part two, I will actually introduce for you some coping strategies you can use to help deal with these mainly negative emotions, okay? So the injury itself, when you get injured in your lower back, this can be just a general, lower back injury, or it could be more serious like a herniated disc, bulging disc, which then leads to sciatica. The problem is it affects our daily lives, all the activities involved in our lives. If you break your arm, I broke my arm back when I was like mid-20s. I had a cast up to here. I could still walk around fine. I was given a special laptop by the university. I was typing on that, one-handed. I got extensions on my assignments. I could still feed myself. I could still wash myself, etc., etc. 6 to 8 weeks later, I was out of the cast. I was getting rehab on my elbow to straighten up my arm again, but I was pretty much back to normal, okay? When you have an injury in your lower back, because this is around about your pelvis, like your center of gravity, it affects us every which way. How you move, how you sleep, how you sit, so, driving, picking up your kids, playing with your kids, picking up their toys, going out to do your activities, your hobbies. If you go to the gym, maybe you go dancing, you play tennis, all of that pretty much comes to a stop when you're first diagnosed, because you can't aggravate the lower back region where the disc is bulging, herniated, because there's so much stress placed on that area. And this then impacts our daily lives, the whole of our life, okay? And it's very difficult, if you've never been in that situation, to truly understand how that feels, what actually happens, and how you have to literally reprogram your day around it. And I speak to a lot of people, and sometimes the realization is they still think they can do a lot of these activities, but they're not going to heal because they keep picking at the scab of that injury. And it's literally, you have to step back 2, 3, 4, 5 steps sometimes, understand you may have to get help. You may have to ask your partner for help. You may have to ask your family, your close friends for help during this period of recovery. And when I say period of recovery, it can be 3, 6, up to sometimes 12 months, okay? So what I'm going to talk about is a variety of these emotions, how they manifest, and assure you they are completely normal, okay? I've gone through many of these myself during my 2 recoveries now from herniated discs, and I've had other issues. I've had torn ligaments in my hips, torn ligament in my shoulder, torn ligaments in my knees. I've had a variety of different recovery periods to deal with different issues. So I've dealt with the mental struggles time and time again. So I'm going to run through a list I got on my computer here. So one of the first ones that can happen is frustration, okay? You can be frustrated that you've got yourself hurt, right? You can be frustrated that you've re-injured yourself, maybe from a previous injury, and you get exasperated. Sometimes you get angry with yourself that, I was too stupid. Why did I do that? Or I should have known better, okay? It's very normal. It's very normal to have these types of emotion pop up, okay? This can then move on to something like sadness. Sadness is very, very common. You just need, if you take a scour through Reddit on some of the lower back groups and look at some of the words people are, how they express themselves, feeling sad. It's not where you get sad, you get depressed, yeah? Because you can't do what you could do before. You can't help out your partner how you want to. You can't play with your kids how you want to, okay? And there's things you can do, I'll talk about in the next video, where how you adapt, your daily life to fit whilst you're recovering, okay? But depression's a really big one, and I put on the thumbnail to this video the dark side, okay, of this particular injury, because it can go on for 6 months, 8 months. They don't believe what they say on some of the blogs, 4 to 6 weeks, blah blah blah, okay? The body itself goes through stages of healing, okay, which can take 12 to 18 months to lay down proper collagen fibers within the disc, within the injured particular area itself in your body. You may be recovered, you may be able to do most activities you could do before at 12, 14 months, but it could take another year or so before the body is actually healed. And there is a difference for me between healing and recovered, okay? So recovered means you can physically do what you used to do everything before. Healing for me is more at a physiological level, what happens inside, within the disc tissue, the spinal ligaments, etc., the nerve, etc., okay? And it can be very depressing as you're going on this journey, because it is a long journey, and you literally have to reframe the thoughts into this, start keeping records, and work your way towards it. It took me approximately 14 months from my first herniation to be, and I was lifting. I didn't touch a weight for 6 months. I started lifting at 6 months, but it was very rehab focused. It was very core focused. At 12 months, I started doing sort of more compound movements, but I still felt I'd still had some nerve pain up to 14 months or so. If I was on a long drive, my leg would go to sleep. I'd get out of the car, maybe 2 minutes later, it would disappear. Second time around, we are now on April, May, June. I'm on 15 months. And I am probably still around about 95% there. Some days I feel a little bit of tingling in my leg, not much. Lifting wise, I still do not load my spine too much. I will do things like step ups with some dumbbell in one hand. I will upload some videos of some of my workouts that I've been doing recently, but it's longer. It's a longer period for me now because I'm 20 years older, so I know things will take longer. So I'm probably looking at 18 months up to 2 years for tissue healing completely. I would like to be recovered at the 18 month, 19 month mark as far as doing all my activities. I mean, I can do most of them, okay, but I'm not loading my spine excessively. So it can be a downward spiral into depression. I've had a lot of clients who literally have been in tears, sometimes on the calls, because of the emotional struggles they're facing, and they can't share it with anyone, which is huge, okay, and understand that. And it's normal for you to feel this way, okay, it really is. And you want to be able to confide in the closest person to you. If there's nobody to confide in, I actually have a Facebook group, which I started a while ago, because I have a kind of phrase, I don't know if it's my phrase, but I came up with it, and I think it's the only person to come up with it, and I say, I'll read it out to you. I say, a shared struggle to a common goal overcomes the adversity we face as an individual. And I feel that you want to surround yourself with people who have been through this issue, who are going through the issue, who are progressing through the issue, who can understand where you're coming from. Because sometimes, that's why I say you want an understanding partner, understanding good friend. It can be very, very difficult for them to grasp just how debilitating this pain actually is, okay? You want to help. You want to, do the chores, you want to do this, you want to help out with the kids, you want to, the kids are wanting to play with their mum, but you can't because you're in so much pain. So depression is very, very big, and I'm going to talk a lot about that in the next video as well, some of the techniques you can use to help get yourself over some of these mental struggles. Now, people will often feel very angry as well, angry that they've maybe re-injured themselves, or the depression, the sadness will actually express itself as anger towards a partner. Now this can happen, husband, wife, kids, close friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. When one partner has this injury and they are getting very internally, upset, depressed, they can't do what they want to do, the partner wants to do stuff, they can't do it with them. and they will take it out, with a short, phrase or short words, or just an element of frustration and anger can boil up. They're not angry at that person, okay? It's not the person's, like, they've done nothing wrong, right? It's this person just venting because they've got nobody to vent to, and they're so peed off with themselves inside that they have to let it out. Yeah. So if you do feel angry, and you've sometimes, said something out of turn to your partner or close friend, it is very normal. If you tell them what you're going through and how this is manifesting, I'm sure 100% they will understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Now, the anxiety which comes from this is another big component, anxiety and fear. There's a model that's going to flash up on the screen in just a second for you guys. And this is the fear avoidance model of pain. So what can happen is the person will start on the rehab journey. I just had a lady the other day who went to physio. She was chatting to me on a free advice call. She went to physio and some did excessive nerve glides. I'm not a huge fan of nerve glides when the person is in quite a bit of pain or it's early stages of the injury. They did a variety of different nerve glides, and then her pain shot up, right? She literally went backwards by about 2 months or something. And the last 3 weeks have been, just dire for her. And I said to her, look, I'm going to give you a really basic program to do. She said, oh, should I be doing this right now? She was freaked out. Okay, not excessively freaked out, but she was worried, and rightly so, because she'd just gone to who she thought was a specialist. He had made her, was it he or she, I'm not sure, that person had made her feel worse, right? I'm suggesting she does some activity. She's obviously fearful, okay, because the last activity she does, that memory's in the brain, that caused pain. Now, what can start to happen if somebody's trying this on their own, or they've had a bad response, they get into what's called the fear avoidance model, whereby they actually do something, it has caused pain in the past, they avoid those activities, they become over rigid, and they're like, they won't move, they become super extended all the time with posture, and they'll actually create a pain response within their body as they go to do this thing, because they think, oh, it's going to be painful, I can't do it, and the body will kick in. And there is some evidence to suggest that pain receptors and the neural pathways can be changed if the person keeps thinking like this. So you have to get them out of that fear avoidance model. Yeah, it is true, it does exist, it's been well studied in the literature. So having this fear, having this anxiety of exercise, again, it is very, very normal, okay? Don't be, unsure of yourself, okay? The exercise side of it is about starting from a very, very low level, pain-free, almost super easy level, right? That we can accomplish something. That's a tick box. I've done it, no pain or minor pain. Then I can move on to something a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. And we do it progressively. And that's what I prescribe as the progressive overload. So if we move on from fear, anxiety, there is, of course, frustration, okay? Because people get frustrated that they can't do what they could do before. They were playing tennis, they were playing golf, they were playing with the kids for half an hour in the morning and a couple of hours at night, whatever. Now they can barely do 10 minutes on the floor because of the pain, okay? Frustration can often lead to anger, can often lead to anxiety, can lead to sadness, okay? Depression, all these things are interlinked, okay? So the frustration you're feeling, especially when you're going through a rehab program and you're doing exercises which you find are potentially easy, right? Because you used to be able to lift, 500 pounds on a deadlift, or you used to be able to play tennis for 3 hours or golf, 18 holes, no problem. And now you're doing some really basic stuff, okay? It's very frustrating. You want to do more, But the way to do this is you basically reverse engineer it. You say, right, I've got a 3 or a 6 month recovery plan. I'm going to work backwards. I want to be at that 6 month point, doing my turn of serve again, hitting my driver, 300 yards down the course, okay, and work your way back, okay, with a properly constructed rehab plan to get you to that point, okay. Expression, of course, you learn to walk before you can run, right? Don't try to knock yourself, because you will if you do too much at this point at the start. And I've had this with numerous people. I had a lady I'm going to speak to again this week. She was doing too much. I looked at what she was doing. I was like, okay, scale that back, do this. And she was like, it seems kind of easy. I was like, trust me, right? Take a couple of days off and she's feeling so much better. And it's just because she's taken a lot of that load intensity down. She's got recovery time now and the body's adapting as it should, yeah? So, getting frustrated, getting anxious is completely normal, okay? Big one next, disappointment. Now, this can happen when you injure yourself, this can happen, you know, after doing a rehab session and you get some sort of pain, okay, after the rehab. Setbacks are going to be normal, okay? It is very common with this type of injury that you will have a setback, and sometimes there's no explanation for it. You might have turned some strange way in your sleep. You might have like moved a chair. You might have, you know, popped your shoes on the wrong way. Who knows what it could be? Sometimes there is no explanation, but just understand that there will be times where you do get a setback. You'll be disappointed in yourself, disappointed in, you know, where you've come from. You've taken a few steps back. This is where I often encourage the use of journaling, so you can see where you've come from, you can see where the pain response has happened, and it can help you adapt for the future, right? But also understanding how you deal with any pain responses is super, super important as well. And it's something I'll talk about in the next video, is, you know, how to read pain, how to give it, you know, a red flag, an amber flag, you know, when to go green again, etc. How to understand that and move forward from that, so you can, you know, again, give you the tools or give you some support, so you know how to deal when these issues appear, you know how to deal with them and move forward in a confident manner. Yeah. Now, the last couple are going to be basically fear and worry, okay? And they two kind of interlink, because it generally revolves around, most people speak to me and they say they're fearful of surgery. They're fearful of not being able to do the things they wanted to do in the past, if they'll ever be able to do them again, if they'll be able to have a normal active life again. And they worry, of course, they worry they won't be able to, you know, run after the kids up and down, you know, the hills, or, you know, around the garden. You know, they worry that they're going to have to get surgery. They may have to get a spinal fusion, okay, all these types of things. So the good news is, you know, 80-90% of cases, they do resolve with conservative treatment, okay? Now, I've had a couple of people, one lady recently, she did go for surgery. She had a couple of different things done in the surgery. We did about 2 months working together, and it just, you know, we got a little bit better, but it just wasn't getting that much better. She had instability issues, there were very different issues. The positive thing was, I said, look, you're now a lot stronger than you were prior to the surgery. Your recovery from surgery will be better, okay, because you're going in, is what they call prehabilitation in rehabilitation circles. You're now in a better position for the surgery. Had the surgery, she worked with me again for another month after to get her back on course. She's a climber, okay, because it does require good, proper rehab after surgery as well. And obviously, you know, learning that you may have to adapt some of the things in your lifestyle after. You may not be able to, you know, deadlift crazy weights again. You may not be able to jump out of airplanes, right? Depending on what you were doing before. But surgery is a necessity at certain times, okay? You want to try all conservative treatments before you get to that stage. But what's equally important is the recovery from surgery. I've had people tell me, the surgeon said to them, oh no, just go about your daily life as normal, you don't need rehab. And I'm just like, they told you what? Like, unbelievable, okay? So yes, it's normal to be fearful and worried that you may need surgery, okay? Chances are you won't, right? I'm not saying you'll never, okay? Chances are you won't, based on the inference in the literature. But if you do, you know, approach it with caution. Make sure you set yourself up with a proper rehabilitation plan, 3 to 6 months, you know, continued for 3 to 6 months after, okay, the injury, because there's a high resurgence, right? A high repeat injury of disc herniations post-surgery. A lot of people, they have no pain because the disc material which was pushing on their nerve or the back nerves has gone. They feel fine, and they actually do movements which do another injury, okay? Same injury repeated. So it is normal to be fearful and worried, okay? But in the majority of cases that people I've worked with, right, they have come back to full recovery with conservative treatments. Those that have had surgery, when we get them onto a good rehab program, they also come back, okay, to their normal pre-injury state, yeah? So, and, you know, another thing with the fearfulness is the actual desire for people who understand. And this goes back to earlier about, you know, if you've never had this injury, if your physiotherapist or your osteopath, your chiropractor has never had this injury, how can they relate to you? Where's the empathy, right? They don't understand what you're going through. And this is one of, I think, maybe, I'm not blowing one trumpet here, but one of the things that a lot of my clients like about me is the fact that I've been there, I've done that, done it again. I'm almost back to normal now. So I've been through all this, okay? And I've been in different countries, I've been exposed to different health systems. and I can relate to what they're going through because I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in numerous clients, and I've developed ways to get past, okay, what they're suffering. There is no 100%, if you do this, you will recover, okay? That's why I say to people, look, try this, we're gonna try this method. I take tools from different instructors and people I've learned from over the years. We put it together. If something doesn't work, we change it, right? If you keep going, well, you know the analogy, right? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, we call that insanity, right? It's the definition of insanity. If you keep going to the same practitioner day in, day out, 10, 12, 20, 30 sessions, and you're not getting better, that modality is not right for you. You have to change it, okay? You have to have a therapist who is adaptable and can adapt to what you need individualized. There is no, there is programs, okay, which will help, right? But if you're a case which needs a lot more individualized support, then a bog standard program will probably not get you there. You're going to need that individualized support where things can be adapted on the fly week to week. And that's where I help a lot of my clients, is I will change stuff within 24 hours sometimes, depending on the person's sort of response to it. Every couple of weeks we'll change things, etc. And that's where they get these, jumps in improvement as they go down the line. Yeah. So these fears, these worries, these concerns, how you deal with flare-ups in the future is a big one as well, because they don't want to be re-injured again. Like, that's a common question I often get asked. Colin, I know I can get through this, but how do I prevent it from happening again? Like, I'm fearful and worried that, I go back to mountain biking, I go back to cycling with the kids, I go back to hiking, I go back to my work, which is kind of a manual job. I'm a tradesman, right? I do have a manual activity that I do to earn money for me and my family. How do I know, how do I manage it? Okay, how do I know it's not going to happen again? Or how do I know what to do when it does happen again, right? And these are all fears that you may have. They're all normal fears. But just understand, okay, that you're not alone, right? And with the right program, strengthening, using exercises which simulate the moves that you do in your daily activity, job, whatever, will put your body in the best position to be strong in those positions to prevent that from happening again. And of course, good body mechanics and how you move, etc. Yeah. Now I'm going to talk a lot more about that in part 2, which will be next week, okay? So if you've not subscribed, please subscribe to this channel, all right? Because then you get notified when that video goes live. It'll be same time next Sunday, okay? And remember, guys, as I said before, I think I'm going to patent this quote or copyright it, whatever you do, what the right terminology is. Remember, a shared struggle to a common goal overcomes the adversity we face as an individual, all right? Folks, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's brought some light into possibly your dark world right now if you're suffering from this particular condition. Feel free to hit me up with some comments, questions down below. If you don't feel comfortable in the public comment section, by all means, drop me an email. There is an email in my signature of the main YouTube page. Drop me an email. I'll happily get back to you with any answers you require. Okay? So folks, listen, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.